Hi everyone, welcome to today's session. And in today's session, we are going to look into UGC NET Sociology previous year questions from the last session, which was June 2023. And in today's session, I have included questions from the Unit 4 of the syllabus, which is Rural and Urban Transformations. And there were 8 questions asked in the last session from this particular unit. So before going into the questions, let me introduce you to the syllabus. The unit 4, rural and urban transformation. So the unit is divided into 2 parts, which is rural and peasant society and urban society. And the first part, rural and peasant society, deals with topics like caste, tribe settlements, agrarian social structure, land ownership, agrarian relations, peasant movements, etc. And the second part, which is urban society, deals with topics like urbanism, urbanity, urbanization, middle class, gated communities, urban movements, etc. So these are the areas included in this unit. Okay, now let's move on to the first question, which is, okay, this is the first question, which is a match the following. So the question is match list 1 with list 2. So the list 1 is of the names of some authors and the list 2 is of some names of books. I think you are familiar with these names because some of them are quite famous sociologists, and I hope you are familiar with some of the names of this book. Some are really famous in this field. Okay, but let me read it out to you. So the authors are G.S. Curray, L.S.S. O'Malley, Sir H.H. Risley, B.H. Baden-Powell, and the books are The Indian Village Community, Caste and Race in India, Indian Caste Customs, and Tribes and Castes of Bengal, Ethnographic Glossary. So we have to match this list 1 with list 2. Who wrote which book? And the options are given, which is a combination of different options. So before moving straightly into the answer, let's know a little bit more about these options. So the first book given is The Indian Village Community. It's a book by Baden Henry Powell, or he is also known as B.H. Baden-Powell, and this book was originally published in 1896. It is a book containing some accounts of Indian villages. And about Baden Henry Powell, he was an English civil servant in Bengal who served as a conservator of forest in Punjab and as a chief court judge. And he wrote on variety of topics including land tenure, forest conservation, and law. So you have to remember the name of the book, which year it was published, and the name of the author. This is important. You have to remember this. Other just read it and try to remember, but it's not mandatory or important. Try to remember this, the title of the books, which year it was published, and the name of the author, and also try to remember what's the theme of the book or what it deals with or what the book addresses. So about Baden Henry Powell, these are some of his major works. Handbook of the Economic Products of the Punjab, 1868. A Manual of the Land Revenue System and Land Tenures of British India, 1882. A Manual of Jurisprudence for Forest Officers, 1882. Indian Village Community, 1896. And Origin and Growth of Village Communities in India, 1899. So just look into this major works and try to remember this also. Maybe questions like this can also ask in this session also, like who wrote which book. So try to remember the books, which it is very important. So now let's move on to the next option, which was caste and race in India. I hope you guys are familiar with this book because it is quite famous. It is written by G.S. Curray, who's also very famous in this field. And this book was originally published in 1932. So in this book, he agrees with Sir Herbert Risley's opinion that caste is a product of race that came to India along with Aryans. So in this book, Curray agrees with Sir H.H. Risley that caste is a product of race that came to India along with Aryans. And according to him, caste originated from race and occupation stabilized it. So Ghure also also of the opinion that caste originated from race and occupation, or the practice of a person belonging to a particular caste can only do one kind of job. So that concept stabilized this caste. And in this book, Khure explains caste in India based on 6 distinctive or different characteristics. So he explained caste based on these 6 characteristics, which are segmental division of society, hierarchy, civil and religious disabilities and privileges, lack of unrestricted choice of occupation, restriction on food, drinks, and social intercourse, and endogamy. So these 6 are very important, or we can say this was the major features of caste system in India. Like caste, based on caste, society was divided into several segments. There were hierarchy, and persons had some, some people had some privileges based on their caste, and some didn't have that. And there were no choice of lack of unrestricted choice of occupation means people had less choice or no choice to choose their occupation. And there were restrictions on food, drinks, and social intercourse, and there was endogamy. And I think you know about this endogamy. Endogamy means the practice of marrying within one's own caste. So Ghure explained caste based on these 6 factors. And according to Ghure, caste is a product of various historical processes adapting to demand of time and therefore a dynamic institution, which simply means caste is not static. It changes according to time. Caste adapts to the changing times means, and it also changes. It is not static. So this is about G.S. Ghure. It is very important. G.S. Ghure is an important figure in sociology and especially in Indian sociology. So he was an ethnographer of tribes and castes, but he also wrote extensively on other topics. And in his writings, Ghure emphasized integration. He gave importance to talk about the importance of integrating people irrespective of their caste. And the central ideas he addressed in his books were caste and kinship in India, new roles of caste in India, study of tribes in India, rural urban India, religious beliefs and practices in India, roles of sadhus in Indian tradition, Indian art and architecture, and Hindu-Muslim relationships. So these were the central ideas of Ghure's books. And these are some of his major books. He wrote a lot of books, but these are the major ones. So you have to remember this. Indian Sadhus, 1953. Family and Kin in Indo-European Culture, 1961. Gods and Men, 1962. Anatomy of a Rural-Urban Community, 1962. Scheduled Tribes, 1963. Caste and Race in India, 1969. In 1969, the 5th edition got published. So that's it about G.S. Ghure. Now let's move on to the next option, which was Indian Caste Customs. So this is a book by L.S.S. Somali. It was first published in 1932, and it is an explication on how caste system operates in everyday life. And it also discussed the merits and demerits of caste system in India. So L.S.S. Somali might be a new name to some of you. So he was a British civil servant in India, and he published several books such as Bengal District Gazetteers, Santal Parganas, and Purnia. And he also wrote some books, and these are his major books like Indian Caste Customs, 1932, Popular Hinduism, 1935, Modern India and the West, 1941. So this is all about L.S.S. Somali, which has some important points. Now let's move on to the next option, which is tribes and castes of Bengal. Tribes and Castes of Bengal, ethnographic glossary, which is written by Herbert Hope Riesly, or you might know him as Sir H. Riesly. So this book got published in 1891 and it has 4 volumes. So about Sir H. Riesly or Herbert Hope Riesly, he was a British civil servant, anthropologist, and linguist who published widely on the customs and social structure of Indian society. So, the main topics he dealt with in his books were customs and social structure of Indian society. And he conducted extensive studies on the tribes and castes of the Bengal presidency. And he is also famous for or notable for the formal application of the caste system to the entire Hindu population of British India in 1901 census, of which he was in charge. So this is important. There is chances for a question like who is famous or who formally applied the caste system to the entire Hindu population of British India in 1901 census. This is important. So the answer is Herbert Hope Priestley. And he was in charge of this 1901 census. So you have to remember this. He formally applied the caste system to the entire Hindu population of British India in the 1901 census. Okay. So these are some of his major or important works. The Tribes and Castes of Bengal, 1891, The People of India, 1908, and The Gazetteer of Sikkim, 1894. So that's it. I think we have discussed about all our 4 options. Now let's move back to our questions. So our question was this: match list 1 with list 2. I hope now you can answer this question easily since we have already discussed about the books and its authors. Anyway, let's look into the answer, which is, look, G.S. Kure wrote Caste and Race in India. L.S.S.O. Malay wrote Indian Caste Customs, and B.H. Baden-Powell, The Indian Village Community, and Sir H.H. Riesly, Tribes and Castes of Bengal, Ethnographic Glossary. So the correct answer is A2, B3, C4, and D1. That's it. Now let's move on to the second question. So this is the second question. Arrange peasant movements in chronological order. So there are 4 peasant movements and we have to arrange this in chronological order, which means based on the year which it started or happened. The first option is Tebhaga movement, Champaran movement, Telangana movement, Naxalite movement. Okay, these are the four options. Now, about Tebhaga movement, this Tebhaga movement began in 1946 in the Bengal region of India, specifically in the districts of North Bengal and parts of East Bengal. It was a significant peasant movement or an important peasant movement that sought to address the issues of land rights and sharecropper exploitation. So the aim of the movement was to address the issues of land rights and sharecropper exploitation. And it was initiated by, the All India Kisan Sabha. It was initiated by the All India Kisan Sabha, or All India Kisan Sabha gave leadership to this movement. And the term Tebhaga, which is in this name, Tebhaga, it is referred to the demand that 2/3 of the crops cultivated by Bargadas and Adiyars means sharecroppers, should be given to them. So the movement got its name itself from their demand. Tebhaga means 2/3 of the crops, and it was the demand of the people who participated in this movement. They demanded that 2/3 of the crops cultivated by Bargadas and Adiyas or sharecroppers should be given to them. So that was the demand of this movement. And this movement led to the inaction of the Tebaga Agreement of 1947. And this agreement granted some concession to sharecroppers, but it didn't, give or accept all of their demands. It fell short of their demands, but it granted some concession to sharecroppers. So this is about Tebaga movement. You have to remember which year it happened, where it happened, and it addressed what issue and who gave leadership to the movement. And you also have to remember if there is any acts or agreements has published or enacted based on the movement. So you have to remember these important points. So the next option is Champaran movement. It is the first Satyagraha movement led by Gandhi in India against Tinkartiya system, under which farmers were forced to grow indigo in 3/20th of their landholding. So Champaran movement is quite special and important because of so many reasons. First of all, it was the first Satyagraha movement led by Gandhiji in India, and it was against Tinkartiya system. It was against Tinkartiya system. So Tinkartiya system means under this system, the farmers were forced to grow indigo in 3/20th of their landholding. They had no other options, but they had to grow indigo in 3/20th of their landholding. And Mahatma Gandhi started the Satyagraha in 1917, and it was the first peasant movement to garner nationwide attention. So this is the another important feature of Champaran movement. It was the first peasant movement to garner nationwide attention, and in many ways, this Champaran movement propelled or motivated India's masses or people to join the liberation struggle against the British colonizers. So it is very important. Champaran movement is really important, and as a result of this movement, there came the Champaran Agrarian Act of 1918, and it led to the abolition of Tinkartiya system. So there is a chance for a question like, which act led to the abolition of Tinkartiya system in India? And the answer is Champaran Agrarian Act of 1980. Okay, so that's it about Champaran movement. The next movement is Telangana movement. So the duration of the movement was from 1948 to 51, and it was an armed revolt of peasants under the leadership of the Communist Party of India, and the movement was against the oppressive landlordism patronized by the autocratic rule of the Nizam of Hyderabad. So it was basically about the autocratic rule of Nizam of Hyderabad. So about Telangana movement, you have to remember its time period, 1948 to 51. Communist Party of India gave leadership to this movement, and it was against the autocratic rule of the Nizam of Hyderabad. And the next movement is Naxalite movement. And so this Naxal movement has been the most rebellious act which has been long ongoing since 1967. So it's ongoing since 1967 in some methods or some forms in various parts of India. So the term Naxalite, it's a generalized term we use to represent the Maoist and militant groups operating in a few areas of India. And the word Naxalite has been derived from the name of a village, a small town, Naxalbari in North Bengal, which comes in the northeastern region of India. So the term Naxalite derived from Naxalbari, a small town in North Bengal. So that's all about the options. Let's move back to our question. This was our question. Arrange peasant movements in chronological order. So this is the answer. Tebaga movement happened in 1946. Champaran movement 1970. Telangana movement 1948. And Naxalite movement 1967. So when we arrange it in chronological order, we get this option. B, A, C, D. Champaran movement, Tebhaga movement, Telangana movement, and Select movement. The next question. So this is a direct question, and what I observed is that recently for the last 2 or 3 cycles of UGC NET Sociology, this kind of questions are very few. Like they don't usually ask this kind of direct questions nowadays. They just go for options, questions like we have to choose 1 or 2 options from the question, and the answer might be like a combination of different options. So questions like this, the direct questions are very few nowadays. So this question, who among the following has studied changing agrarian relations in Tanjavur district, Tamil Nadu? So this is a very simple question. The question itself have the keyword Tanjavur district, Tamil Nadu. That's the keyword. And anyway, let's look into the options. Option 1, M.N. Srinivas, Henry Bitte, Yogendra Singh, and S.A. Dubey. So M.N. Srinivas. He's also a quite famous, very much famous personality in Indian sociology. So he's a field-oriented ontological worker with a structural functional approach. So M.N. Srinivas's approach is structural functional approach. He was a field-oriented ontological worker. And he was strongly influenced by the field works of both A. Radcliffe Brown and Bronislaw Malinowski. He is one of the pioneering personalities in the field of sociology and anthropology in India, and as his work in Rampura remains one of the early examples of ethnography in India. So his famous work is his work in Rampura, and it is one of the early examples of ethnography in India. And these are some of the major contributions of M.N. Srinivas. So actually, he have given a lot of contributions in the field of sociology. These are some of the major ones. So I'm not going deep into this topics like Sanskritization, Brahmanization, and Westernization, but these are very important, and you guys have to learn this in deep because it is very important, and you can expect at least one question from this area in every session of UGC NET exam. So you guys must study this. So these are the major contributions made by M.N. Srinivas. The concepts of Sanskritization, the concept of Brahmanization, and he differentiated between the concepts of Varna and Jadi, and the concept of dominant caste and its role in Indian village societies. He introduced the term Westernization in 1966, and in 1959, he founded the Department of Sociology at Delhi University, and his major fieldwork is Rampura in Mysore. These are some of his famous works. It's a lot, I know, but at least you have to remember the ones which I have highlighted. These are the major works related to his famous fieldworks. So let's just go through the famous works. Marriage and Family in Mysore, 1952. Religion and Society Among the Kurks of South India, 1952. Caste in Modern India, 1962. Social Change in Modern India, 1966. India's Villages, 1955. The Remembered Village, 1976. Indian Society Through Personal Writings, 1998. Village, Caste, Gender and Method, 1998. Social Change in Modern India, 1963. The Dominant Caste and Other Essays, 1987. And The Dimensions of Social Change in India, 1977. So at least try to remember these 3 books. The next person is Andre Bitte. So he is known for his studies of the caste system in South India. He is particularly known for his study of caste system in South India. And Andre Bitte studied the internal structure of Tanjavur village by taking into account some of the major social forces which operate over a wide area and the manner in which they exert their influence on its village community. So here is Here is the answer for her question. So he studied the internal structure of Tanjore village and betrayal, and he studied about various factors which influence a village community and how they exert their influence on a village community. And according to him, the world of the village constitutes a sort of microcosm, which is a reflection of the outside world. So, according to him, or he was of the opinion that a village is village is kind of a miniature, or it is a reflection of the outside world. And these are some of his major works. This is the most important one, in which he gave the ideas of his fieldwork in Tanjore village, caste, class, and power, changing patterns of stratification in a Tanjore village, 1965, caste, old and new essays in social structure and social stratification, 1969, inequality and social change, 1972, studies in agrarian social structure, 1974, 6 essays in comparative sociology, 1974, inequality among men, 1977, the idea of natural inequality and other essays, 1983, society and politics in India, essays in a comparative perspective, 1991, the backward classes in contemporary India, 1992, antinomies of society, essays on ideologies and institutions, 2000, and Marxism and class analysis, 2007. Even though we got our answer, let's just look into our remaining options also. So the next option was Yogendra Singh. He is famous for his work on critically analyzing the process of modernization of India, the limitation of Sanskritization, Westernization, and little and great tradition in explaining social change in India. So, in short, he critically analyzed these concepts or these areas, modernization of India, and how like the limitations of Sanskritization, Westernization, and little and great tradition in explaining social change in India. And he had an integrated approach in analyzing social change in India by considering all factors of social change. So he followed an integrated approach. These are his famous works. Modernization of Indian Tradition, a systemic study of social change, 1973. Essays on Modernization in India, 1978. Indian Sociology, Social Conditioning and Emerging Concerns, 1986. Social Change in India, Crisis and Resilience, 1993. Culture Change in India, Identity and Globalization, 2000. And Ideology and Theory in Indian Sociology, 2004. The last option was S.C. Dubé. So he's a well-known anthropologist and sociologist in India, and his application of the structural functional approach for studying the Indian village community brought him into repute. So he is quite famous for his usage of structural functional approach in studying the Indian village community. And his study of Shamirpet, which is his famous study of Shamirpet, this study provides a description of social, economic, and ritual structure, family level living, etc. So the study of Shamirpet basically talks about the social, economic, and ritual structure, family level living, etc. of that village, or of any kind of villages in particular. So these are S.C. Dubé's major works. Indian Village, 1955, India's Changing Villages, 1958, Contemporary India and its Modernization, 1974, Modernization and Development, The Search for Alternative Paradigms, 1988, Antiquity to Modernity in Tribal India, 1998, Understanding Change, Anthropological and Sociological Perspectives, 1992, Public Services and Social Responsibility, 1979, Field Songs of Chhattisgarh, 1947, Tradition and Development, 1990, On Crisis and Commitment in Social Sciences, 1983, De Kamar, 1951, Secularization in Multi-Religious Societies, 1983, and Development Perspective for the 1980s, 1983. I know it is a lot of books, but have to study this because S.C. Dubey is also very important in UGC NET Sociology. So you have to at least remember some of his major works and the year which it got published. So back to our question. So this was a question. Who among the following has studied changing agrarian relation? The answer, which is Andrew Bette. So I hope it's clear. Let's move on to the next question. Question number 4. Who among the following sociologists in India applied the theoretical insights of the Claude Lévi-Strauss in studying structure and cognition in Hindu society? So the question is, who applied the theoretical insights or who used the theoretical insights of Claude Lévi-Strauss in studying structure and cognition in Hindu society? And the options are M.N. Srinivas, Nakim Marriott, S.C. Dubey, Veena Das. So M.N. Srinivas, we already studied about him, but still let's look into him briefly. So M.N. Srinivas was strongly influenced by the fieldworks of both A.R. Radcliffe Brown and Bronislaw Malinowski, and Srinivas was firmly determined to study religion, caste, and social change. So this was his major areas: religion, caste, and social change. And he importantly focused on fieldwork rather completely falling for bookish knowledge. So of course, M.N. Srinivas is famous for his fieldwork. So he's focused on fieldwork rather completely going for bookish knowledge. And next option is Nakim Marriott. So he has done fieldwork in Uttar Pradesh and Maharashtra. He edited Village India and he authored varied studies on rural social organization and change. So he also dealt with topics related to rural social organizations and rural changes. And he also used structural functional approach in his study of village India. And he was influenced by the model of Robert Redfield and Milton Singer, and he used their model and conducted some studies on social change in India utilizing this conceptual frameworks of Robert Redfield and Milton Singer. So this is some major works of Nakim Marriott. Village India, Studies in the Little Community, 1955. Caste ranking and community structure in the 5 regions of India and Pakistan, 1960. India through Hindu categories, 1990. And next option was S.C. Dubey. So he took forward the tradition of field study and structural functional perspective introduced by M.N. Srinivas in studies of village. So S.C. Dubey's and M.N. Srinivas's methods or perspectives were quite similar, and he provided descriptive exploratory account of village studies. This is important. S.C. Dubey gave descriptive exploratory account of village studies. So that's it about S.C. Dubey. We have already discussed about him in the previous question, so I'm not going in deep into details. And our last option was Veena Das. So this might be new to some of you. So Veena Das's areas of theoretical specializations include the anthropology of violence, social suffering, and the state. And her first book, here is our answer. Her first book, Structure and Cognition, Aspects of Hindu Caste and Ritual, which got published in 1977. And in this book, she brought the textual practices of 13th to 17th century in relation to self-representation of caste groups in focus. So this what we needed, the structure and cognition aspects of Hindu caste and ritual, authored by Veena Das. So back to our question. Our question was, who among the following sociologists in India applied the theoretical insights of Claude Lévi-Strauss in studying structure and cognition in Hindu society? And the answer is, of course, Veena Das. Moving to our next question, question number 5. This is also an arrangement kind of question. So the question is, arrange the rural-urban continuum from the units provided below. And the options are hamlet, urban agglomeration, metropolis, city, and megapolis. So in order to answer this question, you guys have to know what is rural-urban continuum. So let's look what is that. So rural-urban continuum. The term rural-urban continuum refers to the continuity from the village to the society. So it basically means a progression from village to society. That's what rural-urban continuum is. So it can be considered as a continuous scale, and the village is at one end of this continuous scale while the city is at the other end. And both of these social forms are constantly interacting, which means in rural-urban continuum, I already said that it is like a continuous scale, and this one end is of rural area and the other is urban area, but these two are not completely exclusive. They constantly interact each other. They are interrelated, or they somehow interact each other or interdepend each other. So this is rural-urban continuum. Basically means continuity from the village to the city. It's like a progression from village to the city. So our first option is hamlet. So a hamlet is a clustered human settlement that is smaller than a village, like pictured in this image. It's a clustered human settlement that is smaller than a village, and all settlers in a hamlet are typically centered around one economic activity, which means I'll give you an example for like if there is a mine in a hamlet, or let's say if there is a mine, there is chances for a hamlet to develop around the mine, and all the people or all the settlers in that hamlets work or in that mine, and they earn from that mine. So that's how hamlets work. So all settlers depend on one economic activity, or either it can be an example of a fishing community. Yeah, fishing community is a good example. Like there is chances for a hamlet to develop around a lake or on the sides of a lake, and the people depends on that lake for their livelihood. So like that, all settlers of a hamlet depends on one economic activity, and only a few families live there. Since it is a small area, so there is a few families live there. So these are the major points to remember about hamlet. The next option is urban agglomeration. So an urban agglomeration refers to a contiguous and densely populated area where various towns, cities, and suburbs have expanded and grown together, often forming a cohesive and integrated urban landscape. So, an urban agglomeration is a densely populated area where various towns, cities, and suburbs have expanded and grown together, often forming a cohesive and integrated urban landscape. So it's basically like we can call that as a continuation of a town or city which formed as a result of like development processes. And these areas or this urban agglomeration areas are characterized by a high concentration of people, infrastructure, economic activities, and social interaction. So the major feature of urban agglomerations are their high population or high concentration of people. People are densely populated in an area, and they have developed infrastructure, economic activities happening there, and social interactions. Urban agglomerations also, they typically exhibit interconnectedness between different urban centers, and this results in shared resources, labor markets, transportation networks, and economic interdependence. So another important feature of urban agglomeration is the interconnectedness between different urban centers. And as a result of this interconnectedness between different urban areas or urban hubs, this gave way to development of high-end transportation networks, economic interdependencies or economic relations. It gave way to the rise of labor markets, shared resources, etc. And one speciality of urban agglomeration is that it doesn't have any boundaries or, you know, fixed boundaries. I mean, fixed boundaries. It doesn't have any fixed geographical boundaries. Its boundaries might not be clearly defined, and it can extend beyond administrative or political boundaries. And factors contributing to the formation of urban agglomeration include population growth, migration, economic development, and the expansion of transportation and communication networks. So these are the factors which influence the formation of urban agglomerations. And examples of urban agglomerations include, so these are some important or famous examples. Bose-Wash corridor on the US East Coast. Bose-Wash corridor means it's stretching from Boston to Washington DC, and the Taiheiyo belt in Japan, and the Randstad in the Netherlands. So these are some examples of urban agglomeration. Next option is metropolis. A metropolis is a large city or conurbation which is a significant economic, political, and cultural area for a country or region, and an important hub for regional or international connections, commerce, and communications. So, metropolis means it is a large city which have some significance in economically or politically or cultural way for a country or region. Simply means if a city which is important for a country. Like an example is Tokyo. So Tokyo in Japan, it is the largest metropolitan area in the world. And when we consider India, Mumbai is the best example to explain metropolis. So the largest metropolis in India is Mumbai. So that's it. That's about metropolis. It is a large city which is a significant economic, political, and cultural area for a country or region. Our next option is city. So cities are relatively permanent and highly organized center of population of greater size or importance than a town or village. So while comparing with a town or village, city is relatively permanent and highly organized center of population and have greater size or importance. And cities have administratively defined boundaries, which urban agglomerations doesn't have. Cities have administratively defined boundaries, and members of a city work primarily on non-agricultural tasks, which is quite, you know, I think everyone know that. Like, of course, in cities, most of the works are non-agricultural, and cities generally have extensive systems for housing, transportation, sanitation, utilities, land use, production of goods, and communication. So, cities have well developed infrastructure facilities like transportation, sanitation, communication, etc. And the last option is megapolis. So, a megapolis refers to a vast urban area comprising multiple cities or metropolitan areas that have grown together to form a continuous and interconnected urban area or region. So basically, a megapolis is a cluster of multiple cities or metropolitan areas which grown together to form a interconnected urban region. And the typical features of a megapolis is high population density, extensive infrastructure facilities, and economic integration. So these are the major features of a megapolis: high population density, extensive infrastructure, and economic integration, often blurring the boundaries between individual cities or towns, which means while considering a place as a megapolis, there is no distinction between the boundaries or like the geographical boundaries between of a individual city or town. It is considered as one, as a single unit. And megapolises are characterized by their significant cultural, economic, and social influence, housing diverse industries, commercial centers, and a wide range of residential, educational, and recreational facilities. So as it is a collection or clubbing of different cities or areas together, of course it have different kind of cultures, people doing different kind of jobs, etc., etc. So megapolises are usually very much diverse. That's it. And some of the examples of megapolis, some of the major examples of megapolis are the Greater Tokyo area, the New York metropolitan area, and the Pearl River Delta in China. So back to our question. Our question was arrange the rural-urban continuum from the units provided below. So now this is the answer: A, B, D, C, E. So which comes first? Of course, hamlet comes first in the end of that continuous scale. Which comes first? Village. So hamlet is smaller than a village. So hamlet comes first. Hamlet, then urban agglomeration, then city, then metropolis, and in this end, megapolis. I hope this is clear to you. Let's move on to the next question. Question number 6. Arrange the following events of Indian agrarian society in a chronological order. So these are some of the events happened in the Indian agrarian society, and we have to arrange this in chronological order. Before talking about the question, just look into the question structure. Like questions like this are often asked nowadays in UGC NET, which I have already told you. Like questions like this, chronologically order, or what are the options, select from the options given below. Like this kind of questions are usually asked nowadays. So you have to practice this kind of questions much more. So the options are land reforms, farmers movement, green revolution, and permanent settlement. Land reforms. It's the first option. So the land reforms movement in India refers to a series of socio-economic and legislative initiatives aimed at addressing the unequal distribution of land ownership, improving agricultural productivity, and promoting social justice. So land reforms doesn't refer to a single movement happened somewhere. It is a series of socio-economic and legislative initiatives which aimed at addressing problems or issues like the unequal distribution of land ownership, to improve agricultural productivity, and to promote social justice. And it began shortly after India gained independence in 1947, and it continued through the 1960s and 1970s. And it is marked by various measures and policies implemented by the government at both the central and state levels. Second option is farmers movement. So the farmers movement in India, specifically the recent and significant protest against the farm laws introduced by the government, gained momentum in late 2020. So it is a recent movement happened, and I think you all are familiar about this from news and TV reports and all that. So it gained momentum especially in late 2020s. And the protest began primarily in the northern states of Punjab and Haryana in late November 2020. And then tens of thousands of farmers, primarily from these states of like northern states of Punjab and Haryana. There were also farmers from other states also, but especially from these states, they marched to Delhi and set up protest camps at various entry points to the capital city. The movement got intensified in December 2020 and continued throughout early 2021, with farmers demanding the repeal of 3 agricultural laws. So, the demand of the farmers was to repeal these 3 agricultural laws. This is important. You have to remember these 3 laws. The Farmers Produce Trade and Commerce Promotion and Facilitation Act, the Farmers Empowerment and Protection Agreement on Price Assurance and Farm Services Act, and the Essential Commodities Amendment Act. You have to remember these acts. So the farmers movement was basically was against these 3 acts. The next is Green Revolution. I hope I don't have to, teach you anything about this. It is the most famous movement in India, I think. It started in India in the late 1960s. So you have to remember that it started in the late 1960s and extended into the 1970s. And it was a concerted effort to boost agricultural production through the introduction of high yielding varieties of seeds, modern irrigation techniques, and the use of chemical fertilizers and pesticides. So the Green Revolution was focused to, or was aimed at the introduction of high yielding varieties of seeds, modern irrigation techniques, and the use of chemical fertilizers and pesticides. The primary aim of the Green Revolution was to achieve food self sufficiency. So, these all are the methods they adopted in Green Revolution, but the ultimate aim or primary aim of the Green Revolution was to achieve food self sufficiency. And what are the methods they adopted? Yeah, these are the methods they adopted to achieve food self sufficiency, like by increasing crop yields, particularly for staple crops like wheat and rice, to meet the demands of a rapidly growing population. So, in the scenario of this population explosion, to, uh, to achieve food self-sufficiency was very important. And the primary aim of Green Revolution was that to achieve food self-sufficiency. And the initiative was championed by agricultural scientists such as Dr. M.S. Swaminathan and Dr. Norman Borlaug. So you have to remember the year which it started, the aim, what was the aim, and who gave leadership. Dr. M.S. Swaminathan and Dr. Norman Borlaug. This is very important. The next movement is permanent settlement. 1793. Not a movement. So the permanent settlement, it is also known as the permanent settlement of Bengal. It was a significant land revenue system introduced by the British East India Company in 1793. So it was a land revenue system introduced by British East India Company. Lord Cornwallis, the Governor General of India, introduced the permanent settlement in Bengal, Bihar, Odisha, and parts of present-day Uttar Pradesh. And it aimed to set a fixed revenue amount that landowners or zamindars are to pay to the British government. The land revenue was fixed permanently with no provision for reassessment. So this is permanent settlement. It was a land revenue system introduced by the British East India Company. Who introduced it? Lord Cornwallis. And it aimed to set a fixed revenue amount that landowners or zamindars are to pay to the British government. So now back to our question. Our question was to arrange the following events of Indian agrarian society in a chronological order. So this is the answer. So the land reform started in 1947, the farmers movement 2020, Green Revolution 1960, and the permanent settlement 1793. And when we arrange it in chronological order, we will get this option as our answer. Permanent settlement comes first, then land reforms, then Green Revolution, and then farmers movement. So our next question, seventh question. According to Eric R. Wolf, prerequisites for sustained peasant rebellion are: option A, land owning middle peasantry; B, peasantry located in a peripheral area outside the domains of landlord control; C, agricultural labor; and D, rich peasantry. So the question is, according to Eric R. Wolf, so when Eric R. Wolf described about the peasant rebellion, what were the prerequisites for a sustained peasant rebellion which he described? So we have to choose two options or combination of any two options from these options given here. So about Eric R. Wolf. Eric R. Wolf was a prominent anthropologist known for his significant contributions to Marxist anthropology, world systems theory, and studies of peasant societies. And in his studies of peasant societies and historical movements, He offered insights into the dynamics of sustained peasant rebellions. So, in his studies of peasant societies and historical movements, he talked about sustained peasant rebellions. And what he talked was, or his work emphasized that peasant rebellions were not isolated events, but rather part of broader socio-economic structures and historical context. So, back to our question. What were the prerequisites for sustained peasant rebellion according to Eric R. Wood? And the answer is A and B only, which is land owning middle peasantry and peasantry located in a peripheral area outside the domains of landlord control. He didn't talk about agricultural labor or rich peasantry. So these were the two things which he talked about: land owning middle peasantry and peasantry located in a peripheral area outside the domains of landlord control. So the answer is option 1. So now moving to our last question. Question number 8. Who among the following has contributed in the mode of production debate by identification of agrarian classes in case of Malik, Kisan and Mazdoor? So who, the question is short, who introduced the the terms like or who introduced these agrarian classes in the name Malik, Kisan and Mazdoor? And the options are P.C. Joshi, A.R. Desai, Daniel Thorner and Anand Chakravarti. So the first option is P.C. Joshi. So his area of specialization is medical anthropology and he focuses on anthropology of disasters, anthropology of development and on issues related to social exclusion and adverse inclusion, which is not related to our question. And our second option is A.R. Desai. So his research focused on understanding the agrarian structure of India and the challenges faced by rural economies. And he conducted extensive research on agrarian relations, tenancy systems, land reforms, and rural poverty in India. And A.R. Desai was an advocate for land reforms as means to address socio-economic inequalities in rural areas. So he adopted land reforms or he promoted land reforms as a way to address socio-economic inequalities in rural areas. And he authored several influential books and articles, including The Peasant Question and India's Path of Development, a Marxist Approach. I have only included two major books, so you have to remember this: The Peasant Question and India's Path of Development, a Marxist Approach. Now, our next option, Daniel Thorner. So, Daniel Thorner believed that in the Indian rural society, one man could sometimes belong to all three classes at once. So, he was of the opinion that in case of our Indian rural society, a man can belong to different classes at one time, which means he elaborated that, which means he could cultivate some land that he owned, rent some more land from a bigger landowner, and in case of emergencies, even act as an agricultural labor in the fields of other cultivators. So, like this, he can belong to all three classes at once. And he came forth with three terms to analyze the dynamics of agrarian class structure in India. So, these are the three terms he came with: Malik, Kisan, and Mazdoor. So Malik is the class which earns income through property rights. Then Kisan is the peasant class, both landed or without land. And then Mazdoor. They earn their income by working in the fields of other people. So this was our question is about who introduced the terms Malik, Kisan and Mazdoor, or who gave the concept of this? The answer is Daniel Thorner. Anyway, let's look into our last option also, which was Anand Chakravarti. So he was a former professor of sociology at University of Delhi, and he's the author of books like Contradiction and Change, Emerging Patterns of Authority in a Rajasthan Village, 1975, Social Power and Everyday Class Relations, Agrarian Transformation in North Bihar, 2001. So that's it about Anand Chakravarti. Now move back to our question. Who among the following has contributed in the mode of production debate by identification of agrarian classes in case of Malik, Kizan and Masdoor? And the answer is Daniel Thorner. Okay, that's it. Uh, that's all about for today. I hope it was useful. And I wish all of you and all the best for the upcoming exams. Prepare well and try to cover all the syllabus. All the best, everyone. And Professors Academy is providing UGC NET classes for the upcoming 2024 UGC NET sessions, and the admissions are currently open, and we are providing classes for these subjects listed below. So anyone is interested, you can contact these numbers given here, or even if you have any doubts about the admission processes or anything, you can contact these numbers. So all the best for everyone once again. Thank you.